Bad inflation number just dropping here on KCMO Talk Radio 95.7 FM. January's consumer price index inflation rising to 3% year over year. The expectations were for 2.9%. The core CPI inflation, which is basically excluding food and energy prices, rising to 3.3%. The expectations there were for 3.1%. So CPI inflation up 4 straight months. Core CPI officially back on the rise again. Inflation in the United States is hot. The month-over-month number, 0.5%. The estimates were for 0.3%. So this is not good. Now, you sit here, and I guarantee you some of the headlines are going to start to point the finger politically on a Wednesday morning. The Dow futures are off 400 points right now. Now, why would the markets react negatively? Well, the markets are always looking for some news that would suggest inflation's cooling down. Maybe we get some kind of rate cut down the road. That ain't happening, and nor should it happen. I said the last several months under Joe Biden, you can't possibly cut rates in this environment. And even though Trump has suggested or implied we want to cut rates, you can't cut rates right now. Trump can't cut rates right now. Now, you get to a place where you get this federal deficit cut in half from $2 trillion to $1 trillion a year. You try to get spending under control. You will help calm down inflation. That's the broader point that's being missed in what Doge is doing. Right now, we are printing money that we don't have, and we're using that printed money to devalue the dollar, and we're chasing goods and services artificially with money that we technically don't have. That's what's going on. So every single day that we print money that does not exist, you're devaluing the dollar. It's like anything else. If you create more of something, the value of that something goes down. And that's what we're seeing happen every single day. It's why this obscene, and I would argue criminal, government spending that has gone on for the last couple of years, several years in particular, has got to come to an end since COVID, really. Because all that's going on is it's benefiting people in the public sector. It's benefiting the government. It's benefiting government workers. And the guy and gal on Main Street's getting royally screwed by all this. So you sit here right now and you say, okay, what's the biggest driver of this? It's not eggs, okay? Because core CPI, which excludes food and energy, was even higher than the regular inflation number. If anyone's going to tell you that the inflation number was driven by eggs, they don't know what they're talking about. Now, we want eggs to get back under control, but that's largely driven by something you can't blame Trump or Biden for. This bird flu that broke out around the country that resulted in 100 million chickens having to be killed. I mean, I know, Trump's White House press secretary was like, oh, yeah, this is all because Biden killed 100 million chickens. Well, I mean, they had the bird flu, okay? I mean, it's terrible, but not everything is political. But what happens? It's common sense, supply and demand, economics 101. You decrease the supply of chickens, you decrease the supply of eggs. If demand holds where it is, then the price of those eggs are going to go up. That's what we've seen happen. But inflation is not above expectations right now because of eggs. It's not. It's just because the economy still has too many dollars chasing too few goods and services. And it's going to take time for this administration to get that under control. So the inflation number coming in at 3% above the expectations of 2.9%. And the core CPI, which is inflation excluding food and energy, comes in at 3.3% year over year, above the expectations of 3.1%. And to put this in perspective, the Fed wants 2% inflation. We have not had 2% annual inflation in going on 4 years now. That's how long it's been since we've been around that 2% goal. And it peaked at 10% in 2022 after the obscene levels of government spending during COVID and then through the first year of President Biden. Now, Elon was at the White House yesterday, and he talked about this very issue. And I don't see how what Elon Musk says here in this clip I'm about to play is some kind of constitutional crisis, is somehow something that is highly political. If you're just a regular person, I don't care if you voted for Donald Trump or you voted for Kamala Harris. Listen to what Elon Musk says here. It's about a minute clip. And tell me what is so offensive and why this is such a bad idea. Here we go.
What are the two ingredients that are really necessary in order to cut the budget deficit in half from $2 trillion to $1 trillion? And it's really two things: competence and caring. And if you add competence and caring, you'll cut the budget deficit in half. And I fully expect to be scrutinized and get a daily proctology exam, basically. Might as well just camp out there. So it's not like I think I can get away with something. I'll be scrutinized nonstop. But with the support of the president, we can cut the budget deficit in half from $2 trillion to $1 trillion. And then with deregulation, because there's a lot of sort of regulations that don't ultimately serve the public good. We need to free the builders of America to build. And if we do that, that means I think we can get the economic growth to be maybe 3-4%, maybe 5%. And that means if you can get $1 trillion of economic growth and you cut the budget deficit by $1 trillion, between now and next year, there is no inflation. There's no inflation in 26. And if the government is not borrowing as much, it means that interest costs decline. So everyone's, the mortgage, their car payment, their credit card bills, anything, their student debt, the monthly payments drop. That's a fantastic scenario for the average American. I mean, imagine they're going down the grocery aisle and the prices from one year to the next are the same.
That was Elon Musk yesterday at the White House. While Kansas City Congressman Emmanuel Cleaver is screaming about, Elon Musk basically keeping his musty hands, as he said it, off of their money. No, it's our money, by the way. And off of their big bloated bureaucracies. Elon's making a salient case in the White House for why going through the budget and trying to reduce the federal deficit from $2 trillion a year to $1 trillion a year, and then trying to deregulate to grow your way out of the other $1 trillion a year can create a world where, first off, you're balancing a budget, and then secondarily, you're knocking down inflation. And you're knocking down interest rates in the process, because right now the government's basically borrowing against itself is what's happening. And the more money they're printing that's chasing all these different goods and services and who knows what else, it's hurting the average person who isn't benefiting, largely speaking, from the printed money that is just being distributed to God knows where. That's what's playing out in real time right now. So the inflation number's not good. The S&P dropping 1% in the pre-trading hour here. Looks like it's going to open off about 1%, looking at those numbers right now, because this was the month-over-month number was the largest over the past year of 0.5%. And annually, it was the highest number since June of 2024. So this is the January number, which once again, the bulk of that, I mean, let's just be honest too. Trump gets inaugurated on what, January 20th? So this is, I mean, no matter what anyone tells you, this is still the last month for Joe Biden being in office. 2/3 of it is. And if you think Trump's going to lower inflation in 10 days, sorry, that's not going to happen. But I think we're in for a cycle here. It could be a couple of months of this. It's not going to get knocked down over time, just like it's not going to spike over time. Remember, in 2021, we started to see signs of inflation. And what did people say? It's transitory. Remember that line? This inflation, it's just transitory. We'll be back down to 2% in no time. And then with each passing month, it got higher and higher and higher and higher. To the point where by summer of 22, you're sitting there with 40-year highs on inflation saying, what the heck's going on here? This is absurd. So let's remember, this will take time to get it back to where you want to be, and it's not going to happen overnight. And no one expected it to happen overnight. But any idea that Trump's going to get rates down right now, you can't lower rates. That's the one thing I'll say. Trump cannot be talking about lower rates until there is evidence that government spending being cut combined with economic growth is leading us to a place where the Fed can consider cutting interest rates. But I don't see it happening, nor should it happen anytime soon.